Chargers fans were reeling after the loss of Poona Ford, but nobody even really thought Poona Ford was going to be good last year, and the Chargers added a couple more buy low candidates on Thursday for Jesse Minter to work some magic with.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there who have made this one of our biggest weeks ever. Shout out to you guys to make sure you never miss the show. Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, the Chargers were not idle on Thursday. They brought in not one, but 2 defensive linemen to add to that defensive line rotation. And I think you feel really good about Jesse Minter and his staff and his ability to really get the most out of the players on that side of the ball. So I feel like there's some upside there that you can definitely pay attention to and appreciate with both of these players. Also, the Chargers bring back their backup quarterback, Taylor Heinicke, the guy that they traded for just before the season started, is back in the fold. And I think that just makes you feel a little bit better about, that situation with Justin Herbert and the injuries that he has suffered throughout his young career. And could it be that offensive coordinator Greg Roman is making free agents not want to sign in Los Angeles? We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that is a very common sentiment, I think, I've seen out there. But usually what it comes down to, money. But let's start with the money the Chargers did spend on Thursday. And they went, I wouldn't say bottom of the barrel, but a couple of value signings that they're trying to probably, get more out of than they signed them for on the defensive line on Thursday. And we knew when they lost Poona Ford that room was something that had to be addressed, even after bringing back Taylor Heinicke. We love that. But it was still an incredibly thin room. You would have been very uncomfortable going into the draft with. The Chargers addressed some of those needs, at least, on Thursday when they ended up signing Deshaun Hand and also double dipping with Naquan Jones. But we'll start with Deshaun Hand here, David, somebody who is a veteran. And although he's been banged up and might not be, the most flashy kind of signing, there's a couple of really good seasons in there. And it's definitely kind of one of those buy low candidates that you're hoping can bounce back and have a good year in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's been part of a defensive line rotation for multiple teams. He has 64 career regular season games, including 13 starts with Detroit, Tennessee, and Miami. So he's bounced around a little bit. But yeah, he has some things that you can appreciate there. 102 tackles, 5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 12 tackles for loss, and 4 forced fumbles so far in his NFL career. In 2024, he had more pass rush snaps than he did run defense snaps. And so he had 15 pressures and 1 sack. I definitely feel like this is a guy who, hey, could be another Poona Ford. You could put him in the right situation. You give him that opportunity, and you can try to see him excel with the right coaching and the right voice.
Yeah, and I think he had a very average season last year. I mean, out of all the defensive linemen with 300 snaps, he rated 45 out of 106 in defensive grade, 30th against the run out of 106 defensive linemen, and 70th against the pass, or at least in pass rushing. So very average, but I think what you're seeing here is like we saw last year. I mean, Poona Ford had shown he could do it at a high level, then disappeared in Buffalo, right? It was a little different, but you'd at least seen it. And I think that's the thing you see here with Deshaun Hand too, where you look through a couple of these seasons and you kind of realize injuries took a lot away from this dude, but there has been some high-end football in there. I mean, he only played 18 games between 2019 and 2022. That's 4 seasons where he only played basically 1 season's worth of games. Injuries took a lot from him. The nice thing is he's only missed 1 game over the last 2 seasons, which I think is super encouraging. And in 2023, even though he didn't have a huge role defensively for the Dolphins, he ranked as the 7th best interior defensive lineman in the NFL out of 139 defensive tackles that had at least 199 snaps. So he only played 199 snaps, but he made the most of them. He ranked 12th out of 83 with 400 snaps as a rookie. So, I mean, he's been a top 15 defensive lineman based on how many snaps. Anyone who's had as many snaps in those seasons, 2018 And in 2023, he was one of the top guys in the league. So you've seen it actually at a high level, which is why I think you can get some buy-in for a guy who in his last 33 games only has 2 sacks. So I think there is some high-level play. You're hoping that Jesse Minter and Mike Elston can get more out of this guy, and I think there's at least some reasons to think they can. And then the Chargers double dip and go with Naquan Jones, who, I mean, both these guys, touch the sign, whatever, former Titans. I mean, you might as well just say former Titans after like 70% of the guys the Chargers are signing these days, this year and last year. But according to an agent, Mike McCartney, Chargers signed defensive tackle Naquan Jones to a 1-year deal after he spent last season with the Cardinals. Another guy, David, where, hey, this guy might be actually coming off of his best season, and maybe the Chargers think they can even get a little bit more out of him.
Yeah, I mean, hey, when you talk about this 12 games for Naquan Jones, only 260 snaps, 126 run defense snaps, 134 pass rush snaps, 3 sacks in that limited time frame for an interior defensive lineman. I think that's very, very impressive. So 3 sacks, 9 pressures, 2 passes defensed. I think this is a guy who, you can scale. If you scale the snaps, can see, the potential for a very, very big year. Still pretty young as well. So I feel like, you get this guy coming off of a season where he was part of the rotation. And if you increase his snaps, maybe you see some, improved production there. But I think you like what you see in the limited time he was on the field. Given his opportunities, he was making the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, 12 games getting 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. I mean, everyone loves Puna, and Puna was a great player, much better than Naquan Jones was last year. But Puna had 3 sacks too, right? So, I mean, this guy, at least as a pass rusher, put up the same, similar numbers, at least in the sack category, which I think shows you, hey, if you can get 4 or 5 sacks, if you can bump that by 2, you're looking at a really, really good deal here potentially. And also, you saw Elijah Molden, former Titans teammate, voicing his approval of this move too. And the Chargers saw him last year when he sacked Justin Herbert as one of those 3 sacks. So last year ranked 45 out of 125 defensive linemen with at least 250 snaps, 38th against the run, 58th against the pass, 45 out of 125. I mean, that's, top 40% of the league. You'll take that as something to work with. But I do think the Chargers are attacking this room with numbers instead of top-end talent, right? And I think it's part of the ramifications of losing out on someone like a Puna Ford. And I do think that, like we said with Jesse Minter and Steve Klinkskill, when it comes to a Dante Jackson or even a Benjamin St. Juste, is I think a lot of people would look at those numbers and laugh at these signings, especially with the inactivity the Chargers have had. But this coaching staff in one season, I should say, has shown us they can get more, more than the sum of its parts. So I do think that they are attacking it with numbers, and they're going, and basically banking on the fact that they're going to be hitting again on some of these 1-year deals, 1-year bounce back prove it deals.
Yeah, they are. And that's been kind of the theme of the entire free agency period off season so far. It's just been
this
a lot.
This year and last year, man.
Yeah,
for real.
and last year, right? There has not been any big money deals for really any player that they've signed. I don't think they've given anybody more than $10 million per season. I mean, I think it hasn't even been more than $6 or $7 million.
External free agents for sure. I mean, obviously they just gave Khalil Mack $18 million.
Right. But besides Khalil, but the interior or the external free agents, yet they have not spent any kind of significant money yet, which just begs the question: what else are we going to be seeing you guys use that money for? I mean, you can roll over it to next season, but seems like there's still moves that need to be made, Daniel.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, if you're going to re-sign Khalil Mack and show the urgency that to say, hey, we'll give it one last ride with Khalil Mack, not only would it be selling him short if you're not doing anything you can in free agency this season to give them the best chance to win a Super Bowl, because that's the message you're sending to him to get him back in the building to begin with. You're doing him a disservice. You're doing Justin Herbert and an elite quarterback a disservice and potentially not maximizing one of his years. There's a lot of reasons to think, hey, this team shouldn't be rolling things over for cap purposes, even if they don't love this free agency class, which is what it seems like, right? I think they struck out with Puna Ford. And I think this is them trying to kind of cover that up or a little bit, right? Or just at least put themselves in a better position going into the draft, where I still think, it'd be nice to see them draft one, potentially even high if you can fill a couple more of these holes in a good defensive lineman draft class, so you can potentially get that defensive lineman of the future that can be a dominant player in the middle, like we haven't seen in over a decade. And the closest thing was Puna Ford. Not in all aspects, but Puna Ford is the best defensive tackle they've had in a long time. Now you're trying to make it work with maybe some lesser guys after you did that with Poona Ford last year. But we still have more to get into because the Chargers weren't done. They did also bring back Taylor Heinicke, and we're going to tell you exactly why that's important, and also if players are not coming to Los Angeles because of a guy named Greg Roman. All that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because with the big tournament coming up, you can give yourself some chips to play with, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. And one of the best things about March Madness specifically is not only do you get the tournament, right, with 68 teams and just games going on every day and so many games happening, but it's also the time of year you get all the conference tournaments. And as a bartender, I love when there's important college basketball games going on in the middle of the day, and we're getting that not just in the tournament, but right now as well. So I've got my eye on a few underdogs, and FanDuel makes it super easy to bet on them with spreads, totals, and game props. But the FanDuel app is super simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around, which is something that I absolutely love about FanDuel. But make sure you guys are getting in all the college basketball action. Visit FanDuel.com to get on college hoops action all tournament long. All right, David, let's talk about another signing. Maybe not a flashy one, but I think an important one, and that's the Chargers deciding to bring back Taylor Heinicke. And I remember the last couple of off seasons we spent with Chase Daniel and wondering if his age, he still had enough of an arm to actually be an adequate backup. And the reason him being there is because you couldn't really trust Easton Stick to be that guy. And I think we saw that not just at the end of the 2023 season when Justin Herbert did get hurt and they ended up going 0-4 without him on what was, a pretty bad team ended up being. But still, Chargers made this move after just a disastrous offseason by Easton Stick last year, a disastrous preseason. They knew they needed something more. I think it's very important for them to get this deal done.
I agree as well. And I think you finally feel good, about having a quarterback that, God forbid if he has to step on the field, he has already shown in his career that he has the capacity and the capability to start and win games for you. He started, almost an entire season for, the now Washington Commanders. And so I feel like, this is a move that I feel very good about. And also, not only, is it important because of Justin Herbert's injury issues, also like what it does for, the fringe wide receivers and the, tight ends and the players in the offseason that are trying to put their best foot forward and try to really show the coaching staff everything that they're capable of doing. And they can't do that without a competent quarterback. And I feel like that's what Taylor Heinicke is. And, I think it's kind of funny for this one, an up to $6 million deal. You don't really see many backup quarterbacks that have a lot of incentives built into their contracts. And I don't know if probably most of them are going to be tied to playing field time. Hopefully none of those get achieved here. And Justin Herbert is out there healthy and playing every snap.
Yeah, of course. I don't think it's probably as rare as we think it is that backups get that kind of incentives, just especially because there's a lot of situations where guys are going in with rookie quarterbacks where they might be the bridge. And it's like, hey, well, if the rookie takes over for you 3 games in, you're not going to get the full extent of what this contract is. But I do think when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, someone who isn't going to get beat out for a job, yeah, you're hoping he never hits those. But obviously, when you're talking about a quarterback that 3 years ago, right, rib cartilage fracture, then the next year has broken fingers on both hands, and then the next year has rolled ankles on each ankle. So that is a situation for a backup where you might see some time, and you're hoping to be a competitive team that where if Justin Herbert does have to miss a game, even though he's only missed games in one season, you have someone that potentially can go out there and do it for you and give you a chance in these games. And he's a guy with, a 13-15 record. So he's a guy that has given his teams chances to win the games and even has 5 game-winning drives and 5 fourth-quarter comebacks in his career. So better end of backup quarterbacks, and he's getting paid less, assuming obviously since it's up to $6.2 million, it's probably somewhere between $4 and $5 million, I would guess. And so now he's making less than, Jacoby Brissett's, Tyrod Taylor, Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham. I'd much rather have him than Jarrett Stidham. Probably making around the Andy Dalton type of range for backup quarterbacks and what they're getting paid. So not having to pay him too much, but getting someone who can be competent back there and be able to actually give you a chance in a game if you need him to. But it is buy or sell Thursday this week with all the flurry of moves. We didn't get to it earlier in the week, so buy or sell Friday at this point. This week has really flown by, but we did want to get into some because there's overreactions flying around left and right. So let's get to this one here from Nathaniel Nature Erdman, who says, Jim Harbaugh has such a unique and polarizing coaching style that although his locker room loves him, it may not be much of a draw for outside players. Playoff blowout, same old Chargers narrative didn't help. So I'm going to take this, and I do think, maybe Jim Harbaugh puts some people out, but I think for the most part, people want to play for, a guy who's actually done it at the highest level, or has at least tasted a championship at any level, especially, at the top division of college football. But I think the more sentiment I've seen is actually about Greg Roman. And if it's, hey, is Greg Roman forcing offensive players to not sign with the Chargers? That's basically what I've seen all over Twitter all the time. I would sell that to an extent, right? Like, I do think if you're someone like an Evan Ingram, for example, and you have a chance to go to an offense like Greg Roman's that doesn't really fit his skill set, and that's what we told you guys before, or you can go play for Sean Payton, who is Joe Lombardi, right, as his offensive coordinator. That's the kind of offense that Evan Ingram should want to go play in. So for him to take pretty close money, not have to pay California taxes, and the Chargers obviously not trying to overwhelm him by paying him way more and being hesitant to do that, yeah, it could it could affect that a little bit in that specific scenario. I know there was Willie Snead when he was with the Ravens. He said that Greg Roman and the lack of creativity in the passing game forces potentially receivers not to want to play for him. Maybe that is something, right? But then I do think, Najee Harris definitely would want to play for him with how much he wants to run the football. And I think also you'd have to factor in that Ladd McConkey just put up one of the, if not the most insane season a wide receiver has ever put up in Greg Roman's system. So I think that would at least put some of those to bed. I think what it comes down to for the most part, it's not Jim Harbaugh more than likely. It's not Greg Roman more than likely. It's who's going to offer the most money. And the Chargers have shown you that they're being pretty stingy with their money this offseason.
I mean, why do you think a lot of players have agents? I mean, if your name's not Bobby Wagner, you're really not negotiating your own contracts. Like, this is all about yes. Do players have preferences? Of course they do, but they're looking for opportunities and where they are going to make the most money. The NFL is a very exciting but very short-lived career. So you have a very small window to make the most money that you possibly can before you get jettisoned out of the league. It's just part of the gig here. And as far as for Jim Harbaugh, let's not forget, the 4 out of the 5 years he's coached in the NFL, he has led a team to the playoffs and to playoff success. And also, as you mentioned, just came off of a national championship victory. So I don't think it really has very much to do with Jim Harbaugh or their multi-$100-million facility that they have at their disposal. I do feel like maybe, if this fit in the offense is marginal and there's another team that fits better, then yeah, that might play a factor into it. But at the end of the day, it's all about the money.
Yeah, I think it is for the most part. Let's get to this one here from Chris Saiz, who says, buy or sell, regardless of any future signing, this free agency has been a disappointment. Man, I know this sentiment's definitely going around, and I think at this point, David, it would be very hard for just the free agency part specifically to feel like a huge win for the Chargers.
It would. There's really not a lot of guys out there that right now, if they signed them, it would make you feel great. Maybe a Tevin Jenkins, that might make some people feel all right. It would make me feel a little bit better, but it would make me feel a lot better trading for Mark Andrews. And guess what? There's a little bit of a timeline on it now. As we know, on March 17th, Mark Andrews is due to receive a $4 million roster bonus. And obviously, Mark Andrews has a $16.9 million cap hit, and the Ravens do not have a lot of cap space to spend right now. So that would be one avenue where they could trade or release him and get $11 million in salary cap relief. And Mark Andrews is still that dude. 5 of 7 seasons with 50-plus catches. Also, at least 500 receiving yards in every single season and 2 seasons of 10-plus touchdowns. And also looked at as a very well-rounded tight end. So you make a trade and you bring in a Mark Andrews, then I'm immediately feeling better about what happened in this offseason.
Yeah, and I totally understand. I think, yes, there are fans overreacting. There's fans who want Justin Herbert traded to Minnesota, right? There's a lot of overreactions going on right now, and I think it's too late for many fans to kind of get back on the kind of hype bandwagon that they had going in with $90 million in cap space and what that was going to mean for the 2025 roster. that ship might have sailed for a lot of fans. And there are some fans that are just going to blindly kind of follow what this, regime's going to do and be stoked about any signing that happens. The truth is somewhere in between. This has been a disappointing free agency. You do have to take some chances and try to improve your roster. And also, at the same time, without speaking out of both sides of my mouth, there is still more time for things to happen. Like, if the Chargers signed Mekhi Becton and Tevin Jenkins tomorrow and wanted to throw in an Amari Cooper as a science experiment, I'd feel a lot better about it. So it doesn't mean it can't happen. Will the Chargers go out and keep spending like that? Only time will tell. I mean, it feels like right now they're not a huge fan of this free agency class, and they don't feel like the future or, multi-year contracts are valid for these guys and not wanting to overspend. That's usually good business. But you do have to improve your team this year and give yourself a chance for a Super Bowl this year as well. But we still have more to get into, including if the Najee Harris signing means that J.K. Dobbins is gone, and also why the Chargers haven't signed an interior offensive lineman at this point, which is insane, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, and I've even made kind of a little competition with myself. I like that I can see things so clearly with Monarch and so clearly about where some of the money I have is going, and it makes it very kind of easy to be like, hey, I'm going to beat that number next month, and it's going to be lower, and I really love that about Monarch. And you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. David, we have more buy or sells to get into, but thank you to all the everydayers for making us your first listen today. If you need a second listen, make sure you guys are keeping up with the draft with Locked On NFL Draft. My guys Damian Parson and also Keith Sanchez, as they get you ready for what's going to be super important next month as all the free agency buzz is flying around. They're who I keep listening to, so make sure I'm not losing out on the draft coverage on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But let's continue this buy or sell here, David, with superfan Zachary Shelton. Buy or sell, the Najee Harris signing means the end of the J.K. Dobbins era for the Chargers. David?
I'm going to sell it. I feel like Najee Harris and J.K. Dobbins are both running backs, but that's about where the similarities end as far as what they bring to the table. Najee Harris is a running back that wants to run through you and wants to pick up those hard, physical, fall forward type of yards. And J.K. Dobbins wants to hit and has the ability to hit the home run. He has the ability to take it the distance, as he showed multiple times with the Chargers last season. I feel like he still is a fit. He's still young. It's another year removed from an Achilles injury that you really didn't see much of a drop off from. Yeah, he missed a little bit of time with the knee sprain, but when he came back, he still was able to do his thing for the most part. So I feel like this would be a great compliment to Najee Harris. And if it's not J.K. Dobbins, then yeah, they still have work to do in that room.
Yeah, I mean, if it's as of right now, I would buy it. Like, I don't think it's game over for it, but I think right now, if they didn't sign another running back, or if they just went and signed, Hassan Haskins or someone more special teams focused at this point going into the draft, it wouldn't terribly surprise me. I mean, they know what J.K. Dobbins brings to the table. J.K. Dobbins is still out there, so maybe the money has gone down some because he hasn't been a super hot commodity so far this offseason. But I don't know. I would buy it right now that J.K. Dobbins is not going to be back with the Chargers. If I had to put an amount of money on it that meant something to me, I'd say he's not back in 2025. And we'll see. Let's get to this next one here from Jackson, who says, buy or sell, Najee Harris as the lead back for the Chargers would be an unmitigated disaster. There needs to be another running back signed or drafted to give Justin Herbert a running game he deserves, in quotes, as promised by this organization. You buying or selling that?
I don't know about unmitigated disaster. I mean, I think that's a little bit drastic in the verbiage there, but I would say that if the room looks the same, then yeah, it's something I'm going to have to buy. This is not going to be the case though. Like, they're not going to go into the season with just Najee Harris and, Hassan Haskins and, Kamani Vidal. It's not going to be just those guys. I will
I think
put
what he's
money on
saying
it
is
right
they
now.
still need to add somebody significant because he's saying that Najee Harris shouldn't be the top back, right? So he's saying they need to add somebody basically better than Najee Harris for this to be kind of a successful non-disaster.
Yeah,
I think is
they
really
do.
what it is.
It's not a running back, though. It's interior offensive linemen that they need to add so that they can actually allow Najee Harris to do his thing. But also,
Yeah.
you look at Greg Roman and how he's built his running back rooms throughout, his tenure. It's always been a running back by committee approach. It's going to be multiple
not always.
guys.
I mean, Frank Gore was the guy. I mean, for them back in the day, he was pretty much the main guy during those 49er years. I mean, and they brought him in to be a workhorse. Like that is the what the commodity is about him. Not having to worry about it, not having to think, okay, am I splitting this and this? If they give it to him like they have given it to him, if they want him to be that guy, he's going to be that guy, and a consistent guy that's always going to give you 4 yards, but never going to give you 40 yards. That might be what it is.
Yeah.
I do think it is, though, an unmitigated disaster if you bring in just Najee Harris.
Right.
Don't change the interior offensive line. Don't improve the other parts that have been killing your running game and expecting Najee Harris to elevate your running game to the next level.
Exactly.
I think Najee Harris can be better than what we saw from him. And even if he is the 4.0 yards per carry or the 4.1 yards per carry, you do that over an entire season and get 1,000 yards, that's a good season.
Yeah.
But I just think that it's a disaster if you think that is kind of the fix-all for this running back room right now.
Exactly.
And I still think that they will end up drafting someone. How high? It still could be pretty high because you have Najee Harris on a 1-year deal, and he's really the only guy that's a proven commodity right now in that running back room, unless they do go sign another free agent before the draft. But we do have a voicemail here from Athir, who's wondering why the Chargers are being so stingy with the money they're not spending on all the offensive guards that we're seeing out there.
Daniel, David, biosell and overreaction from Athir fan favorite. The Chargers are being a little stingy right now with this money because you're not willing to spend a little bit money on the guard that is on the market. I'm buying it. What do you say? I get the point for not signing the early players. But now, come on, guys. Spend some money. What are your thoughts? Thank you. Love you.
I think it's a good question. I think that's the biggest question on everyone's mind. If it's not, why didn't the Chargers go get Justin Herbert, a premier weapon? It's why is the offensive line, as of right now, a week into free agency, still the same? It's still the same guys right now. And I do think it'll change. I'm still holding out hope that it's going to be better by the time the draft gets here, right? But I do think that right now, I think that to Atir's point, like, you might not think all of these guys are the 4-year future for you, right? You might not believe in Will Fries and think that giving him 4 years and what he ended up getting is a good deal and has big red flags next to it. That's totally fine. You don't have to think that Aaron Banks is worth 4 years, $77 million. And maybe that's a deal like that changes the kind of complexion of the entire thing, right? Because you're like, whoa. I'm not going to give close to $20 million to a dude that has those kind of flaws. And there was better options out there for them. The one that gets me is Kevin Zeitler, because I don't think it's about older guys or younger guys. I don't think they thought any of these young guys were the future and they could just put big time top 10 guard kind of money to. But I do think Kevin Zeitler is the one to me that's the most kind of mind boggling and head scratching, because it's 1 year for $9 million to get the most automatic 1-year upgrade at the position you were going to find. I mean, you're talking about a top 5 graded guard per PFF last year, and even as a 35-year-old, has familiarity with this system, has shown that he can still do it at a very high level, and showed you that he's going to come for very cheap. I would have given him more than that and felt super happy about it. So I think I understand partially, hey, if you don't want to give these guys 4 years, $20 million per season, because you just don't believe in that much, I get it. But it doesn't mean you can't still upgrade, especially when you have a short-term one that's not going to mortgage your future, and you let them get away for less than $10 million a year.
That one is a complete head scratcher to me, because that was an easy bake oven situation. You set it and forget it. What this guy's going to bring to the table.
He fits.
He fits perfectly. It's hand glove, perfect fit type of situation. Like you said, if you don't want to dole out those big contracts for some of those players, fine. I get it. What you can't do is do nothing. That's one thing that absolutely can't happen. There is no way that you can sit here and look at that offensive line on the interior and think, I'm just going to run it back with the same guys. No way. You know that's a failure. You know that is setting Justin Herbert up for no success. That is also not allowing your new running back that you just signed to have success. You have to overhaul that part of your offensive line in order for you to be able to reach the type of football team success that you want. You want to be physical, you want to run the ball, well, you better have guys that allow you to run the ball and guys that can protect your superstar quarterback, because last year what you had was not good enough. So you got to do something.
And I think that's just kind of where the panic comes from, not seeing that group be instantly upgraded and spending premium resources on it in free agency, because unlike with the defensive tackle group, unlike with the cornerback group, those groups, we trust the coaching staff to maximize and get more out of than maybe another coaching staff didn't. We gave Greg Roman that benefit of the doubt last year. We gave him the benefit of the doubt that Zion Johnson would take a leap under him, that you could make Trey Pipkins work, that you could get Bradley Bozeman back to playing at a higher level like he did when he was in your system in Baltimore. We didn't get it, right? Jamari Sawyer didn't look any better. Like, none of the guys looked like they took a huge leap. So it's hard for us to say, okay, well, don't panic. There's still, options out there. Yeah, but like, if they go bottom of the barrel and try the same bounce back kind of formula they're doing on the defense, I don't think it's going to work, because I don't trust this offensive coaching staff to get more out of the guys they're signing if they're signing bottom of the barrel guys, which is why you wanted to see proven commodities signed in free agency. And there's still some out there, but it doesn't seem like the urgency is there to go get them, which, let's get to this one word answer, David. Say out 55, buy or sell. As Chargers fans, we will be happy with the offensive line before the draft.
I'm going to sell it. At this point, I don't think there's anything that's giving me any...
so much more than one word.
Yeah, sorry. No, just sell it, period.
It does feel like a sell. I mean, and even if they signed one guy, right? Like, I don't think there's one guy that's a fix-all for me that makes me feel great about it going into the draft, knowing that you're still going to have to go into the draft and get a really good starter and someone that you feel like can compete at center that could be an upgrade over Bradley Bozeman and a potential Zion Johnson moving to center situation, right? So I'm right there with you. If it's one word, it's sell on that. Things can change, but we'll see how we feel about it on Monday when we're back here, and maybe some more moves happen. Make sure you guys are back here and don't miss it by subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding us every day on all of our social media, on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as the only yearly, everyday podcast out there, your team every day. And also make sure that you're subscribing on YouTube and listening wherever you get your podcast from. We will be back with you guys on Monday. Hopefully we'll be back here talking about some good news, because Dayon Henley says, trust Joe Ortiz. He's cooking. Tierra Tart says, Joe's a genius. Let him cook. What is happening? Maybe we'll know on Monday. Make sure you guys are back here for that. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.